So just a quick overview. Industry Skills Australia was Australian industry standards in the previous iteration of the SSO model. So we've been in this space for around 30 years with a couple of different names. Every time the government changes the program, we have to change our name and adapt. So we've done that, and I think the most important thing is that we've got a really good understanding at the moment of the issues in industry. We've done a lot of work recently, and I'm going to give you an insight into the work plan and how we fundamentally think about it. And I don't think anybody would disagree that the number one issue facing our industry in transport is the attraction and retention issue. We just can't attract people into the industry, and then we can't hold them. We need to do better in a lot of ways, so we need to figure out how. So what I'd like to do is take the opportunity to just take you through that and talk to you about what we actually do and how we think about it. And the first thing in the workforce planning process, whether you're an employer or someone like us doing it, is what do we need now and how is it changing? So what are the skills needs we need? Are they specific? Are they technology based? Are they practical based? What machinery or changes are we looking at doing in our process or in our business? And how is that going to affect the workforce that we need to train and have working for us? So we've got existing staff that need to be brought through, but in new people coming forward, there needs to be a bit of planning as to what they need. Then we've got to sit down and have a look at what have we got. So what skills do we have in the organisation and what skills do we need? We know that the age of the drivers is very high. We know that we struggle to get people to work in the maintenance side of the field. So how is it changing? What have we got now and how's it changing? How can we keep those people rather than them say, look, I've been working on diesel motors my whole life, I'm not going to work on electric buses, and we lose them to another industry. So it's important that we reflect on where we are now and how their role is changing, because there are a lot of people with the same colour hair as me in the industries that we have. And the problem with that is we're all getting close to retirement, but we've got a lot of background knowledge on the industry that's probably too valuable to walk out, because if all of the people over 60 walked out of the transport industry, we would lose a fair portion of people, unfortunately. What are the gaps? Okay, so we've looked at what we need, what we've got. So what are the gaps? What are we trying to fill? Are they compliance people? Are they drivers? Are they mechanics? Are they sales personnel? Are they tour operators? Every sector of the industry, whether it be bus, truck, warehousing, stevedoring, they all have specific skill shortages at the moment, and not unlike yourselves, are struggling in the limited market to get people. But if you know what your gaps are, you can actually address it by targeting people with the skills to fill those gaps straight away. Failing that, you have to actually train for it, but you need to identify them. And when we talk about the future, if you look on a 3 and a 5 year plan from a workforce point of view, I know I need 15 people at the moment, but every Christmas I need to have 35 in my crew. How do I do that? And it's a bit like warehousing with the gig economy. Things have ups and downs. So warehousing suddenly have to put an extra 20 people into pick orders over Christmas, or 50 people into pick orders over Christmas. When the bus season starts and all the parties and hirings happen, all of a sudden you've got extra drivers required. How do we look to combat that? How do we look at making sure that we've got that covered? And what can we do? And then an enterprise workforce plan to address the gaps. So, sorry, Andrew, were you going to say something?
Sorry, mate.
That's okay. So once you've done an enterprise workforce plan just to address the gaps of what you need, and it doesn't have to be detailed, you can do it on a whiteboard, you can do it anyway. But what it does is it informs you of what you need. What are the full-time headcounts for each now in the short, medium and long term? Have we got a skills matrix? Do we know what the capabilities of our current people are? And that's important because quite often we have people in our organisation that we don't know have particular skills that could benefit the organisation. What are common jobs across the industry? So are we able to go and steal someone, or are we able to look at what they're doing? So there's a number of questions we have to ask ourselves by looking in the mirror. Workforce planning is all about career and training pathways, recruitment, retention, succession plans, multi-year workforce development. So sometimes you're not going to be able to meet what you need in a year. It may take 2 or 3 to get to where you need or where your organisation's going. Regular reviews of the plan just to make sure you're still on track and they're relevant. But it should be done by an enterprise so they know where they sit. Once we've had a look at ourselves, it's what do we need? What are the job roles and the headcount for each now and into the future, short, medium, and long term? And we know there's those peaks and troughs, so we need to look at ways of, okay, how do we address that? Can we use students? Can we use holiday labour? Can we use tourists? What is available to us and what works? And you don't want an arduous task of having to train a lot of people and then they come into work for 6 weeks over the busy period and then you lose them and never see them again. The aim would be to try and keep them in the business and keep them rolling through if possible. Now, that's not always the case, but if you can, it actually helps immensely. Create a skills matrix for your organisation for competency. Know who can do what and what can do who, because that tells you what you've got covered and what your gaps are. It's one of the easiest things to do. And how are we going to obtain them, or how do we obtain those people or those skills that we need for our organisation? What do we have to do? And one of the things we know in our industry is that we're very poor at attracting and retaining. It's important to find out what is going to be a good feeder. Are truck drivers getting to the end of their day that want a little bit of a lighter life? Can we steal them into the bus industry? Are there young people who have got licenses now that are 25, had them for 5 years, but have never driven a vehicle? And there are more licensed people out there than there are heavy vehicles, which is quite amazing. But the issue with that is that the licenses out there at the moment don't necessarily make a person job ready to drive a bus, to drive a truck, or to fit into the system. Sometimes that little bit of help has to come from the employer. And what are the foundation or employability skills required to commence employment and the training needed in the bus industry? So sort of what levels of education do we need to get? And we're not just talking drivers, we're talking admin staff, we're talking maintenance staff, we're talking sales staff. So there's a lot of different skills within a standard enterprise that runs a bus business. So what do we need is very important. If you don't know what you need, you can't go chasing it. What have we got against the future needs? So what's the head count now versus the future needs? Are we going to need less people because we're going to get bigger buses and carry more on one bus than 2? Which the trucking industry is trying to power towards high productivity vehicles because you can carry 2 40-foot containers on those vehicles, reducing the number of trucks on the road. So there's a big push to that. But then we've got a problem with infrastructure. So, is there an issue or a situation where if you do put a bigger bus, the infrastructure doesn't allow it, so you can't get it across a bridge, or you can't get it around the streets you need to pick everybody up? How is the job changing? What is the turnover rate? Do we need to redesign the jobs? Are the regulations doing what they should? Is there technology that can help? So when you look at the jobs, now one of the things that we've just started working with in waste companies is to have job share arrangements. So where we've taken 2 people to share one job. So one's driving the truck in the morning and one's driving in the afternoon. But we talk about rosters and things like that. People will leave if they don't have any weekends with their families, or they don't have any public holidays with their families. People want time for that. Now, they don't have to be family people for that. Single people want that as well. So it's important that we look at the job and say, well, how can we make that job better and more desirable to individuals? And is that the flexibility of job share or different start times? Is that simple little things to allow them to work a 5-hour shift instead of a 7.5-hour shift, but it actually keeps the bus on the road. So there's a lot of different things that can be tried. Not necessarily easy to do, and I'm not saying they are. However, the more you look at, the more it gives your business the opportunity to be different and to be an employer of choice. And in this tight economic environment with not a great deal of spare staff out there, it is important to make sure that you're seen as an employer of choice. Whether that be, you might not be paying the best money, but you might have the best conditions. So people know that if they've got an issue with their family, they'll be looked after. These are the things that are starting or are showing in the data that we're looking at that are saying that this is what people want. Training records for each worker against the skills competency matrix. Oh, sorry. It's important that we do that so we know what skills we've got in the business, because if we don't know what we've got, we don't know what we need. And that's quite simple. Is it a situation where sometimes we may have to say, well, we can't maintain our own maintenance. We'll have to contract maintenance out to somebody else, and particularly get them into a contract or an MOU so that you can potentially keep going without the worry of not being able to maintain your own buses? Or do you simply split it and do a bit of each? So there's a lot of things that need to be looked at, but if you don't know what workers can do, you can't ask them to do it or to learn new things because you don't know what they don't know. And I guess when you look at an enterprise workforce plan, the gaps between the need and the have now and in the short term are probably the most critical. People are starting to think, well, what's the difference now? We're starting to see electric buses come in. So do they operate differently? Do they drive differently? Will our drivers of existing buses be able to drive them? So these are questions that we're asking ourselves, and we have a look as, well, yes, there is a lot of difference in driving one to the other. But there is a lot of things that are still similar. So a lot of the skills will be transferable, but there are gaps. So if you're going to get a new bus, and we've just done it last year, we had Matt Threadcold from the Executive Director of Bus New South Wales as part of our industry reference committee. And one of the things that he orchestrated last year was getting the electric vehicle, heavy vehicle operation and pre-inspection units. So whether you're driving a bus or a truck, you can actually go and do a unit of competency that will take you through the differences of driving the combustion engine versus the electric. And everything's going electric in the short term. Everybody's wanting to get into it. Will the infrastructure support it? Well, that's another question. And is the infrastructure there to do it? Probably not at this stage. It's interesting to note that in the research we have is that to charge one bus or truck overnight to get the battery to full is equivalent of what 80 houses use in electricity. Now, when you look at that in the summer, I live in Victoria, anybody else living in Victoria will tell you that the government tells you don't run your air conditioning and all that in the heat because we haven't got enough power to run everybody. So how are we going to run the houses, run the factories, and charge all the vehicles? So I think that there's going to be a bit of a concentrated effort down the track to figure that out, because they're without a lot more, a hang of a lot more solar and energy that's green, I suppose green energy is the easiest way to say it, then what's the value of going to electric? Because you're using all of these power plants and diesel and coal, so you're defeating the purpose of what you were trying to achieve. So it's important that the government actually looks at how they can address the power issues. And I suppose all of you are aware that Mr. Forrest from Fortescue, him and another gentleman in Australia, another billionaire from Australia, are actually selling solar generated energy to Singapore. So they've got a solar farm in the outback supplying roughly 20% of all Singapore's energy. The question I have is, why is that going overseas? Why is that not staying here? Because we're all going to need it when it comes to the vehicles. Create a career and a training pathway. Look at your recruitment, retention, and succession plans. What is the average length of time people stay in your organisation? How difficult is it to recruit? And you could almost look at that by position. And then if it becomes difficult in one position, are there ways internally of taking people through? Back in the old days, something, I don't know if anybody's aware of it, but they had cadetships, where you'd come in and you'd work in all different parts of an organisation. And once you've done that, you would then decide where you wanted to work. And it gives people a lot of opportunity then to see the industry as a whole, not just the one section that they get into. A multi-year workforce development plan. Let the people know what your changes are coming up. People are fearful of change. So when you know that you're going to have to train or change the way you do things because you're getting new vehicles, new methodologies, let the people know. The more aware they are, the less problem you'll have down the track. And you need to review your plan regularly, as we will be doing an annual plan on behalf of industry. I guess, what are other things that you can do? Well, regional collaboration is really good with industry, schools, RTOs, employment service providers, and government. We contact all of them to get information, and all of them generally ask the same question: do you know where we can find some people? Identify transferable skills from other industries. So we know that, oops, I beg your pardon. We know that we have transferable skills from a lot of industries in the mechanical side that could come back in. We know that we have transferable skills in the driving side that could come back in. But what about the other positions? Well, it's the same in the office positions, the cleaning positions. There are people out there who have similar roles, just cleaning different things or maintaining different things. So have a look. Promote diversity and inclusion. One of the things I just spoke to you about was doing the job share. Now, we did that with Australian Women in Transport, and that association was very keen. Now, they were concerned at the start because we were putting a whole bunch of people who hadn't driven a truck before into trucks. But what we did is we had 10 people. We put them through some training for 14 weeks with the truck. And now 12 of those people are actually working for a organisation in New South Wales, picking up rubbish on split rosters. So one's doing the morning, one's doing the afternoon. So one starts at 8:30 and the other one starts at 2:30. So they're actually job sharing, but what it means is that those trucks are not sitting in the yard. The same could be done with the bus industry. You can have someone drive the morning, and someone drive the afternoon. So there are a lot of ways to address the problems in that instance. I think from a learning perspective, one of the things I would say is, we know that you're having trouble getting people because Transport for New South Wales, Sydney Trains, did some work with the bus industry in New South Wales, and the shortage of drivers was continually growing and growing and growing. It's growing at a slower rate than truck driving vacancies, but it is still growing. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some programs in place. Our aim from this will be to ask the department for some tools to be able to attract people to the industry. I've done a bit of a walk around the country, and there is very little transport and logistics fed in schools. there's plumbing, there's other things, but transport and logistics is not something that is very common in vet. So what we need to do is we need to get some young people in. We need, not only from the diversity point of view, but from an attraction and retention point of view. Once we get a few in, others will follow. Now, we can do that. The easiest way is from schools, because there is always going to be kids who are not going to go to uni, but we're always going to need kids in our workforce. And by the time they leave year 12, most are 18. Now, they're not going to walk into driving roles. That's obvious. But for all other roles, that is a definite possibility. They can start with you that they would have their heavy vehicle license, and you can put them into an apprenticeship if you wanted to take them through that process. That's entirely up to you. But the key is, if we don't create an inkling for them to want to join our industry from schools, then we're going to lose them to others. Because right now, the transport logistics industry and bus industry, warehousing, we are, I guess, I can't get a job anywhere else, so I'll go and see if I can drive a truck, or I can drive a bus, or I can drive a race truck. We don't want that. We want people to actually see this as a preferred occupation. And what I'd like to do is, for each of you on this call, is take some time, if you send me an email, is actually take some time and actually have a bit of a one-on-one question and answer session with you to do a bit of research into your specific workforce needs in relation to the bus industry, to ensure that it can be included in our workforce plan that we will deliver in March next year. So any questions?
I've just popped a question into chat, Klausch. I've got a couple. So how do you go about increasing that visibility in schools? Is that a piece of work that Industry Skills Australia would sort of work on with, your TAFEs and your vet RTOs and vet providers to kind of create the training, and then that gets, there's some kind of way that it is promoted into schools? Or how does it work, that piece?
So it's an interesting question, Andrea, and we've been working with Tasmania at the moment. We figured it's confined space, it's quite easy to do. So what we've done is we've approached a group of schools with the Tasmanian Trucking Association over there, and we've said, like, do you have vet in schools? No. These are all of the industries we look after in the transport space, from a bus driver through to a maintenance person, through to a admin person in the office. Do you think this is something that the kids would be interested in? And there was an overwhelming yes. Yeah. The problem that they had was, we don't have the resources. So we don't have a trainer. That's the first issue under the school's RTO system. Yeah. So we don't have a specific trainer. We don't have the ability to actually set it up. We don't know industry. So the key is creating a sustainable model, meaning it just doesn't work once. It just continues to roll on and supply people. So that's going to mean that we actually, in this trial we're looking to do in Tasmania, we will provide all of the learning resources that would be available to all schools. So no school would have a cost at putting this on. And that's a big thing, because if they've got to spend money, their budgets are not tight, are very tight, so they struggle. So we're actually helping them set it up by saying, here's the stuff that you need to teach them. It's yours to use for as long as you want. We're using the associations to build a industry review. So the Tassie Trucking Association is building a warehousing, stevedoring, bus, truck transport video to show all of the different careers that we have. Now, we have pathways and bits of paper, but seeing is believing. So once we've built that, and the schools have access to not only the resources, but the learning or the occupational opportunities in the transport and logistics area. Well, every year it gets easier and easier for them, because they become more and more familiar. And once it's in there a couple of years, very hard for them to actually get rid of it, because the kids will want to do it. Yeah. Now, at the moment, we're taking a very slowly approach in relation to which qualifications they're learning, but people will come out of that and go straight into the traineeship or apprenticeship, depending what part they go to in the industry from school. So it's been great. And look, nothing to say we couldn't do a similar trial in bus industry in South Australia as well, or bring in not only the bus industry, but the transport industry as well, and do it together, which it becomes all one.
Yeah.
But it's about building that group of schools and then rolling it out through the Department of Education.
Yeah. I've got another question from Durrani. It kind of relates to another thing I was wondering, and then I suppose if people don't mind, we might save any other questions until the end, because we'd better flick over to James. But Durrani's question is, Klausch, do you think that perhaps companies are advertising in the wrong areas, like Seek? A lot of people don't actively go looking on Seek for a job in the bus industry, or young people probably in general at all. However, when chatting to people, they didn't even ever think about driving, or didn't realise companies needed staff. So,
look, I don't know whether it's the wrong area. I don't think you can afford not to go and seek, but I totally agree with what you're saying. A lot of people don't go there. What you need is, you need to be, buses have logos on them all over the place. They have advertising on. Advertise a career in a bus, advertise a career. Do you want to work in an office? Do you want to drive a bus? Do you want a bus cleaning contract? Do you want this? You have an opportunity there. They drive around, kids see them. You pull up at schools. Those are the buses that I would be doing, and doing it different. Trucking companies, if they want to get kids interested, in November or December, they take the biggest, flashiest truck they can to school and let the kids crawl over it and have a drive around somewhere that's off-road with the driver inside, to get them interested. And once you got them hooked, it's a lot easier. So, yeah. But I would really, I'm happy, Andrew, for you to share with everybody, and I'm happy to talk to each and every one of you individually to get some issues that you have, workforce issues, and sort of have a discussion on maybe how we can either potentially put a project together for the next year, or make sure we get that information into the work plan and start to get a national approach to it.
All right, cool. Well, I'm happy to, very happy to create all those links, and to sort of, gatekeep anything that I need to. It's or sort of, be the central point for any. Oh, sorry. Okay, Nathan has to leave. Nathan's left. Had to go to another meeting. We might park any more questions, and move to James. Thank you, Klausch. I love listening to you talk about all this stuff. So most of you probably know, many of you do know James Jeffries. He has worked in the transport industry since 2011. He worked in the RTO at the Rail Commissioner as a training facilitator, and in 2020 started his own business, Trained Crew. He provides bespoke training for the transport industry. So he's currently working with operators such as Grants and Spencer Golf Coaches, providing workplace driver training tailored to their businesses. So James is here to talk to us about training as an approach to overcoming the chronic skills shortages that Klausch has just been drawing our attention to, and that we all know about. So I'm going to pass it over to you, James, and mute myself.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be meeting with you today. I'll just get the screen sharing happening. Hopefully that's going to cooperate for me. And with any luck, that's doing its trick. Hopefully, Andrew, a thumbs up. Have we got the screen? Excellent. Great. No?
No screen yet, James.
Oh, okay, that's good. I'm just trying to work out why that hasn't come up. Share screen. Oh, hang on. Me and technology at the moment, I'm having constant issues. Let's just try that again. Share screen. Hopefully that's working?
No.
No, let's try that one. Any luck?
Klausch, have you unshared yourself completely? I'll just put on multiple participants. Have another go, James. There we go.
Ah, there we go. Success, finally. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continued connection to land, waters and culture, and pay respect to Aboriginal elders, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, past, present and emerging. I'm meeting with you today from Kaurna land. The traditional lands of the Kaurna people are the Adelaide Plains region. So today I want to talk you through a little bit about a model we could apply to skill our industry. So as you're well aware, our industry is facing enormous challenges at the moment with not only workforce shortages, changing technology, but navigating a changing regulatory framework, in particular with the National Heavy Vehicle Regulations, and also changing customer expectations. These challenges are easy for large corporate interests to navigate and allocate resources to overcoming those. But for many smaller operators, they feel that this puts them at a disadvantage. I think overall, small to medium operators actually have an enormous advantage. You're small, nimble, and adaptable. This puts you in a position where you can adapt quickly to changes in the industry and in the market, and use this as an opportunity to not only hold on to, but grow your market share. How does training fit into that? Training is a crucial part of having a skilled workforce. We can rely on other people to train our staff and rely on only recruiting people with experience. But even then, that's going to leave significant gaps. I come from a rail background, and the value of training in rail is not just important, it's absolutely essential. It's everything that we do in rail. And coming into the bus industry, I could see that there were significant opportunities for us to be doing it better. And in that, coming up with a workforce that not only meets but exceeds our customer expectations. Our customers have, depending on the market segment you work in, have pretty high expectations, especially when you look at charter work and tour work. But all the same, even for operators in the public transport space, there's an important standard, the very high standard that needs to be achieved in terms of customer service. The biggest challenge for public transport is not only about retaining customers, but attracting new ones. There's a bit of a philosophy there that public transport just exists for the sake of it. But the challenge is to grow our ridership there so that public transport is the transport of choice for people, in particular living in our larger cities. So over the next few slides, I'm going to explore a model which can provide a pathway to help overcome some of our challenges. Before I present the model, I'd like to have a look at some of the training needs and methodologies which we use in our industry. So our key reasons for training, first and foremost, is induction training for new employees starting in our business or starting in industry. And the introduction of new vehicles or equipment is a pretty significant reason that we might need to conduct training. It's also important from a safety perspective to make sure that our staff are properly inducted in our depots and the vehicles that they work in to meet our legislative requirements. Route training is a pretty important area. The impacts on our business, if our drivers are not familiar with the routes that they're providing services on, can lead to significant delays in our service delivery. Regulatory requirements are pretty significant now with our National Heavy Vehicle Regulation framework that's in place. And with that, the two biggest considerations being chain of responsibility and fatigue management. And I think some of the recent incidents that we've had across the country have highlighted the needs for us to be taking this seriously. And ongoing verification of competency of our drivers, and for that matter, all of the staff that are working within our business, but in particular for our drivers. Key trainee cohorts that we're looking at in our operations: new employees either entering the industry for the first time or joining our businesses from other roles, driving in the bus and coach industry. Employees returning to the workplace after a long-term absence. With our very casualised workforce, it's quite often the case that we'll have workers that will come in on a short-term or seasonal basis to help us fulfil our busy periods and peak seasons. So it's important that we can maintain the competency of those workers. And a significant one that I've seen from my own experience with operators is workers transitioning from other heavy vehicle sectors. So this might be rigid trucks or light trucking, or drivers that have worked with semi-trailers or B-doubles coming into the bus industry with very little background in the customer service expectations and requirements that are involved in our sector. And of course, our ongoing competence through verification of competence programs. So how can we go about delivering this training to our particular trainee cohorts? There's three key approaches that we can apply. I'll have a brief discussion about what they look like. So our first one is face-to-face using qualified trainers and assessors. So this is somebody who holds a nationally recognised trainer and assessor skill set or qualification. So the best known one of those is the Certificate 4 in Training and Assessment. In a perfect world, this would always be our preferred option because it delivers important benefits by having trainers that have a very clear understanding of the rules of evidence and can deliver outcomes against national units of competency. But there are disadvantages with that. It can be costly. Even with subsidised training, it can still deliver significant cost burdens to employers. And our biggest issue there is having the availability of experienced trainers in industry. We simply don't have them there, which presents us with the option of using other people within the workplace to conduct that training. It's very easy for us to build the capabilities of existing workers. So if we can upskill existing staff into a coaching and mentoring role, we get the benefit that they already have familiarity with our business practices and procedures, which means they can assess very effectively against organisational standards more easily in many cases than an external provider coming in to conduct that training. Workplace mentors can be easily deployed to conduct training and work skill instruction between other tasks that they perform in the workplace. So this is great when you consider things like new inductions. A mentor driver can go out with a new employee, conduct their depot induction, take them out, familiarise them with the vehicles, maybe go for a drive or go out with them on a couple of runs to be able to help them get familiarised with the workplace and with our procedures. And of course, for things like route training, drivers have an intimate knowledge of the routes that they drive regularly, in particular things like hazards and obstacles that drivers will encounter. Having somebody really experienced to go out with them helps to protect our vehicles by helping those new drivers to identify hazards early on. And of course, we can build a positive organisational culture. Picking the right people to act as workplace mentors in your business means that you can reinforce your workplace values and positive workplace culture. The key disadvantage of using mentors, of course, is that they're unable to train or assess against nationally recognised training independently. However, building up a body of evidence for workplace competency, all of the material that you gather and the information that you're able to collect as part of a mentoring process can contribute towards a nationally recognised outcome through recognition of prior learning and other pathways. E-learning has been around for a few years. It's widely used in some industries, but as far as the bus industry goes, it's not something that I've seen embraced. Coming from rail as well, at Rail Commissioner, we were probably 10 years behind the 8 ball in terms of really rolling out effective e-learning to our workforce and using it to build capability. Developing and delivering effective e-learning resources can be done really efficiently, and in our industry makes good use of downtime drivers often have between driving jobs and tasks. For new employees, we can deliver a program or necessary parts that need to be delivered before drivers arrive at the work site. If you consider things like safety instructions or corporate inductions, these are really effectively delivered online and can mean that drivers can hit the ground running once they arrive in the workplace. The other advantages you've got is that many HR platforms on the market support e-learning in some form or another. So you can build effective training programs into your existing systems, which can be incorporated into employee induction programs. And if all else fails, if you don't have one of those, the Moodle platform, it's open source, it's used around the world by millions of learners and thousands of institutions. It can provide you a quick and easy pathway to building a learning management system. These systems are great for helping you keep track of learning records. And to touch on what Klausch was talking about earlier, building your skills matrix and maintaining training records, which can be used to identify the skills that your workers hold, as well as identifying gaps in your learners. Disadvantages, of course, in e-learning is your employees must have a reasonable level of digital literacy in some cases to access those systems. So the current program we're rolling out with one client, we're spending a lot of time just navigating through the older workforce there and their ability to actually get into the platform and get learning. Of course, aside from digital literacy, language literacy and numeracy can be a problem as well. Previously, in our industry, we haven't given a lot of consideration to the language literacy and numeracy standards. The important thing is, can you drive a bus? Can you read road signs? Yes. Whereas now in using things like e-learning, we need to consider that a little bit more closely. A key thing, of course, is making sure that you design the assessment events in your e-learning to make it to ensure that your learners have actually read the material. So multiple choice questions are often the most flexible, easiest to deliver method of conducting assessment with online learning platforms. However, you need to have plausible distractors in there so that you can actually challenge your learners when you conduct the assessment. Suitable technology can be an issue. If you're designing e-learning, you need to be considering the platform that it's going to be delivered on. So in particular with things like mobile phones, you need to make sure that the text is readable on a small screen. And now to the model itself. We're looking at encouraging industry to use a model which is going to be flexible and economical. So in the short to mid-term, our workforce challenge is to help skill up the employees that we have in the industry and to be able to get skilled workers into industry relatively quickly. The model that we're presenting to our clients at the moment revolves around using e-learning and workplace mentors. So we can deliver easily scalable workplace training with minimal investment using e-learning platforms. We're currently rolling out a range of e-learning to one of our clients, which is being used to speed up the induction process for new workers and help us identify gaps and communicate key workplace information to the existing workforce. Using workplace mentors on the ground means we can utilize existing skills and experience to deliver on-job training that we just can't deliver using e-learning. So crucial to this was developing a set of training and mentoring resources which can be quickly delivered to the workforce. We've developed a one-day course which can be rolled out to workplace mentors to help get them skilled up to be able to deliver workplace mentoring. Training tools that revolve around industry standard resources that give consistent results. We're working with our clients to develop resources which will be fit for purpose and can be used across our industry to help build a consistent delivery model across all of the employers and operators that we work with. And our model revolves around using a training provider to conduct quality assurance with our clients. The development of training resources, supervision of workplace mentors, the records management and training system coordination is conducted by us to ensure that we can deliver high standards of training and consistent results to our clients. Really key to building our capability long term is to look at how we can make best use of the training that we're delivering. Using a micro-credential can help us to deliver consistent training right across industry. So a micro-credential is shorter than a qualification and certifies the learning of a defined set of skills, knowledge, or attributes through a bite-sized course. It can provide our businesses with flexibility to rapidly adjust to changes in technology and the labour market. So that's taken from the South Australian Skills Commission. They've recently completed an extended trial on micro-credentials in South Australia. I was hoping that trial was going to continue and I could tell you about all the benefits of an industry-endorsed micro-credential. However, even aside from the Skills Commission removing the micro-credential program, there's no reason moving forward why the South Australian bus industry could not work to develop a micro-credential program to help skill our workforce. We know we have a transient workforce and people tend to move through quite rapidly in some parts of our industry, but developing a standardised micro-credential skill set can help workers to transition through industry more easily and reduce the training burden as they move from employer to employer and operator to operator. Well, a little bit too fast there. So the key benefits that we can look at in micro-credentials is they could be delivered as part of a pre-employment program. So considering our available workforce, we've got a few main groups that we can be looking at. We can be looking at people at the end of their working life that are looking for employment because the work that they were doing is no longer suitable as they get older or they're looking for a change of pace. I've noticed that many of the drivers in our industry are 60 plus and just looking for part-time work or looking to get into a job that's easier on their body. We can design pre-employment programs to target those workers in particular, or school leavers, or look at people that are looking to change industry, and design programs which mean that we can skill them up and get them work ready. It helps us to recognise skills across the sector. For instance, if somebody can drive a type of vehicle with one operator, that would allow us to recognise that with another operator more easily, eliminate the need to retrain every time somebody changes employer. And it helps us to provide a consistent approach to assessing skills across the industry. Now, accredited training, as much as it's out of reach for a lot of operators, is still something long-term as an industry that we should aspire to and aim to be delivering in the longer term. The South Australian Skills Commission, Skilling SA, offers a range of funding streams to support innovation and capability building projects across industries. This can provide us the opportunity to use training subsidies and those different funding streams to build resources and design training programs for our industry which meet our current need and our needs into the future. What are the key benefits to using nationally recognised training? Well, of course, the fact that it is recognised and transferable is really, really useful, especially in considering workers that are moving from or into other areas. The best thing about the transport logistics industry is there is a huge amount of common units of competency that sit in our Certificate 3 in driving operations, and many, many other qualifications and skill sets that are delivered in industry already. The training is quality assured. We know that it's met benchmarks and minimum standards and has covered the subject matter comprehensively. We've got funding available to help us deliver this training. And we have key competencies included in the transport logistics industry training that can assist us to manage risk to our business. In particular, things like fatigue. Fatigue is a massive, massive risk to all operators, and delivering better training outcomes will help us to manage that risk moving forward. We can use apprenticeships and traineeships to assist us in retaining staff that bit longer. We do expect in a modern workforce that there's going to be some transition, and when we look at younger people entering the industry, often they will enter and move on to other areas quite quickly. One thing we can do to help stem the tide of workers moving through our industry and help skill them up along the way is to look at things like apprenticeships and traineeships. Industry Skills Australia did a lot of work recently in getting Certificate 3 in driving operations onto the Australian apprenticeship list. This is something that's available to us to help keep those workers in our business a bit longer. You can bring somebody in on an apprenticeship, have them work through different areas of your business. It's not simply about putting them in the driver's seat. Have them work through different areas and learn your business along the way. And you've got them for that guaranteed term for the length of their apprenticeship or traineeship. Hopefully your business is going to be an employer of choice that they're going to stay in. But if they do leave at the end of their traineeship, then they'll be helping to contribute to the competency of the transport workforce moving forward.
James, excuse me, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Oh, look at that. Sorry, I'm shut my mouth.
I thought I was supposed to have the timer going, but I didn't put it up. So I'm sorry if I've run just a little bit over there.
No, you're fine. You're fine. We were running a little late anyway while we were waiting for all those naughty no-shows. Does anyone, I know we've gone over time, but if you guys have got a bit of time, crack your microphone's open and your video open. And does anyone want to ask James some questions or Klausch some questions? And is there anything anyone wants to talk about in particular? I love the deafening silence.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, James, yeah, well said. There's a lot of things there that you alluded to that are exactly what we are hearing nationally. The fact that, you know, you talk about being able to do it online and the flexibility, some of the things that you offer, those are the critical things. And when they've got a bit of downtime, make hay while the sun shines. I think the other thing that is probably very, very important is people's qualifications are often used by an organisation to promote the organisation. So be proud of what your people have and what they do. You know, we've had trucking companies come to us to get letters validating that they have so many people qualified in this area when they're going for a Coles or a contract with a big supplier. They actually use the training that they've done as a positive. So, you know, the key is training will continue to grow your workforce and give people opportunities. If you use training in the workforce as a way of succession planning, people will be with you for longer periods than 2 years or 12 months because you're giving them a future and an end goal. And James, you said that very well. That's critical to survival for our industry.
Yeah, and micro-credentialing is and non-traditional training is becoming increasingly recognised by employers now. You know, that old-fashioned kind of, you know, university is the only way to kind of, you know, get a decent qualification is becoming sort of very old hat now. And people are accepting, you know, the sort of, you know, chunks of education, recognising it, you know, which is really wonderful, I think.
Well, let me just give you a financial fact. It's proven that people in vet industries have a bigger earning capacity.
That's right.
Because they don't start with a debt.
That's right. I was talking to a scientist about that the other day. She said, "Oh my God, I wish I knew that before I did my PhD."